As a water crisis threatens irreversible hydrological damage in the Holy Land, Sea of Galilee levels continue to drop below red lines. In this edition of Israel Vision, join me, Jay Rawlings, to investigate cutting-edge solutions offering the source of life to a thirsty land.
It is expected that soon there will be a ban on irrigating all public or private parks, gardens, and lawns, and that even drinking water will be rationed by the end of the summer.
Israel is passing today its deepest and most severe crisis of water business. This crisis is expressed mainly by the lowest levels of water of all the main freshwater resources.
At a Jerusalem press conference, the State of Israel Water Commissioner Shimon Tal warns of dire consequences if the nation fails to adequately respond to the looming water crisis. In fact, droughts and water crises are nothing new. The Bible says that in the time of Elijah the prophet, brooks dried up because there was no rain in the land. Drought ravaged the land for 3.5 years, devastating the economy of King Ahab's Israel. Actually, during periods of drought, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob often managed to get the attention of a distressed chosen people. The message was a clear call to repentance.
Cycles of droughts and more blessed years have been known throughout the history, going back to the story of Joseph in Egypt, why the Israelites came down to Egypt. So it's nothing new.
Itzhak Behar, manager of the Rain Enhancement Division of Mekorot, the National Israeli Water Authority, believes the prophet Elijah may have employed an early form of cloud seeding. For over 40 years, Mekorot has successfully enhanced rainfall in Israel through cloud seeding. As Scripture says, Elijah called for a great rain out of a little cloud like a man's hand that rose out of the sea.
In the Bible, we have a story about the prophet Elijah who looked out over the Mount Carmel, and there had been a drought for 7 years, and he saw a cloud about the size of a man's hand, and out of that came a tremendous relief for the drought. Are you looking for clouds like that as well?
Perhaps they knew of a substance that, when burnt, rose into the clouds, as Elijah's sacrifice rose from the altar on Mount Carmel to the sky, later bringing clouds of rain. However, we don't know what substance it was.
Praying for sufficient rainfall in the land has been a part of Jewish ritual since the Israelites took possession of Canaan over 3,000 years ago. God said, "For the land which you are entering to take possession of is not like the land of Egypt from which you have come, where you sowed your seed and watered it with your feet, like a garden of vegetables. But the land which you are going over to possess is a land of hills and valleys, which drinks water by the rain from heaven."
We have a lot of storing capacity in Lake of Galilee, for example. We just go and see how low it is. You know how much more water it can store. And Israel is called the Holy Land. And I give you another meaning for that. It's full of holes. It means that it is a limestone, which is quite porous, and the rainwater can easily infiltrate to the groundwater and fill it. So if we have intense rain, most of it can come to the aquifers and replenish them.
A thirsty, expanding population, as well as agricultural, industrial, and urban development, have strained both surface water sources and underground aquifers to the limit. Red lines are breached and then lowered with unknown consequences.
The Kinneret, or Sea of Galilee, the major surface water source visible to the eye, is supplemented by 2 major underground aquifers. The mountain aquifer in the higher ground of Judea and Samaria, including the Jerusalem hills, and the coastal aquifer. All of these are under threat. We at Mekorot, the National Water Company, are entrusted with supplying water to the entire country. The region is semi-desert or semi-arid. 2/3 of the country's water supply is in the north, whereas 2/3 of the water consumers are in the center, and the largest agricultural area is in the south of the country. Our task is to convey water from the north where there is a surplus to areas where it is lacking.
לדוגמה, המצב
In order to carry out Mekorot's task, which literally causes the desert to bloom, the National Water Carrier, a massive engineering project, was inaugurated in 1964. Vast amounts of water are pumped out of the Sea of Galilee from 210 meters below sea level up to an elevation of 41 meters above sea level. From there, the water flows through channels and a 130-kilometer pipeline reaching to Israel's population centers and agricultural areas. Mondi Rosenthal leads us past steel doors
What do we have in here?
into the depths of a hillside on the Sea of Galilee's northern shore. Here at the Sapir station, 3 huge 31,000 horsepower electric engines drive pumps feeding the National Water Carrier.
בתוך ההר. וכאן אנחנו רואים את 3 היחידות הוותיקות.
We're in the hall inside the mountain where the pumps are located. The 3 of these can deliver 24,000 cubic meters of water an hour up to an elevation of 250 meters above the lake surface. The pumps often work late at night when there's more electricity available and at weekends when electricity rates are lower. Here we see a smaller engine. The technicians are checking it to make sure there are no cracks that might cause a leak and an electrical short. Water passes through these valves into a pressure pipe. The water is delivered from the lowest freshwater source on Earth at minus 209 meters or minus 214 meters at present up to plus 41 meters at Beit Nekufa. From there, gravity carries the water southwards via the National Water Carrier.
The Sea of Galilee is more than 5 meters below its upper red line, following several drought years and below average rainfall since the mid-90s. Consequently, pumping from the Sapir station has been greatly curtailed. The receding water line has dried 8 square kilometers of lake surface. Landing docks where boats once moored are overgrown with brambles and weeds.
The budget of the Kinneret and our other water resources is composed of 2 elements. One is the natural replenishment, which is controlled by rainfall, and the other is what we take out, which is the water consumption, how that is managed. And unfortunately, that is beyond my specialty, but we have to look very carefully at both aspects.
But there would be what you could say like an overdraft has occurred. Is that correct?
That is something that I would easily subscribe to. That expression, we do accrue a substantial overdraft in the water bank account.
We simply use more water than what is recharged. Very simple. So when this happens, the water table in the reservoirs go down and down and down and down, and the results are 2. One is that there is a tendency of saline water to burst in.
Global warming influences precipitation. As average atmospheric temperatures increase, the amount of water vapor in the air also rises, resulting in extreme weather phenomena, both flooding and drought. Major volcanic eruptions also influence the weather globally. This occurred following the Mount Pinatubo eruption in the Philippines in 1991, which caused unprecedented rainfall in Israel. This record precipitation ended a previous drought cycle and revitalized depleted water sources.
The rainfall in Israel, oddly enough, is most sensitive to major volcanic eruptions that are so intense that the material is thrown up to height of several tens of kilometers to the stratosphere, and it changes the whole global weather pattern in a way that in Israel we get much more rainfall. And it did happen several times in the last century, and the most intense time was in the early 90s, 91, 92. And then we got the record rainfall in the whole recorded rainfall history in Israel. more than 2 times of the annual rainfall, and the water replenishment of the groundwater in the Kinneret was about threefold. And by that time, we already were near the red lines in all our water reservoirs, but then it was a miracle. The Pinatubo erupted, and we got everything filled again, and since then we are declining again, and now we seem to rely on the next miracle. Well, let's see what volcano will erupt next, or if it will not, we have to do something else.
During those 3 years, in 1989 to 91, the Kinneret water level went down drastically. The volcano saved us. However, since then, Israel's population has increased by 1.5 million. Now we have a greater population and must increase our agricultural output to feed these multitudes. So the solution is not to rely on volcanoes, but rather we must turn to the sea for desalination. The sooner we do this, the better.
Something must be done. Experts all recognize this fact, but agreement on the best solution is less forthcoming. Some propose cloud seeding, others desalination, or import of water from Turkey, or even simple water conservation measures locally.
What about the idea of importing water from some of our neighboring countries that have water?
It's simply not smart. The basic reason, without going into details, the basic reason is that water transportation is expensive, relatively expensive, much more expensive than, for example, electricity in the wilds. And when you're talking about bringing water from Turkey to Israel, by definition it will cost more than simply desalinating locally as much as you need and whenever you need.
The advantage of water import from Turkey is the relatively high speed in which we can receive fresh water.
Today we know that in desalination the price per cubic meter is 65 to 70 cents. Our price with cloud seeding is 3 cents per cubic meter, which is 20 times cheaper.
This is the culture of making decisions, the level of the form of organization, the level, the professional level. There are so many questions why there is no master plan on energy, and it's not only in Israel, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. People, decision makers, don't think beyond the edge of their nose. Small-time politicians of the farmers, and they said, as soon as there will be desalination, we won't get cheap water anymore. And as a result of these two, for over 30 years, there was absolutely no investment in developing the water system until recently. One of the reasons is that there are about 10 ministries who have some authority as far as water is concerned, and none of them has responsibility, which is again a problem of our Western world, that you have more and more agencies and everyone is trying to pull his way more authority. The fact that he doesn't fulfill even the authorities that he has already received.
I've tried not to talk about politics, as one should not mix politics with water. If I do mix politics and water, the water becomes polluted.
For decades, Israeli farmers have used partly treated sewage water to irrigate fruit orchards and cotton fields. Although recycling wastewater helps cut back on clean water usage, the practice has its downside.
You pollute the water reservoirs, the underground water reservoirs. And I can show that every cubic meter that you irrigate at the present quality that you get from sewage treatment plant, you put a penalty on our children and our grandchildren. it's only a matter of time, sooner or later, that they will have to take the solids, the pollutants that in the sewage, to take them out of the water before they use it. If you ask me what is the most important thing, it's producing more water.
Are there cheaper ways than desalination, or?
Oh yeah. First of all, there is, as I said, there's still a lot of sewage that for less than half the cost, you can put it into use, but as long as it is at the quality of drinking water. Nobody should even think doing it otherwise. It's a damage and not it's not a benefit.
A comprehensive solution to Israel's water crisis involves a coordinated, multi-pronged effort on a national scale, involving desalination, recycling wastewater, educating the public and municipal authorities in water-saving methods, and investments in cloud seeding. Tests have shown that over 40 years of cloud seeding by the National Water Authority has increased average annual rainfall by over 15%, particularly in the Sea of Galilee rain catchment area.
Over time, we've performed tests that have shown an increase in rainfall on days that clouds are seeded with silver iodide compared to days when clouds are not seeded.
We have here a long-standing program since the 60s with several experiments that have shown statistically significant enhancement of rainfall in the northern part of Israel, of about 10 to 13% added rainfall on an annual basis, and that translates to approximately 50 million cubic meters of water additional to the Lake of Galilee.
We employ two methods. Our planes fly directly into the clouds, releasing silver iodide, and our numerous ground stations across the north of Israel release iodide into the air over a greater area. The two complement each other. Clouds full of rain measuring 1 by 6 kilometers typically contain 100,000 cubic meters of rain, of which only 20% falls as precipitation. So the potential to increase this amount is great. We watch the overall picture from here using these radar images. We know where to send the planes and when to operate the ground stations. We can't say that if we had 10 planes instead of 2 that we would have 5 times more rain, but we want to find the optimum level of seeding that would give us the best result for cost.
Cloud seeding is only effective when actual weather fronts blow in from the Mediterranean. During drought years, there are simply fewer clouds to work with. Nevertheless, Israel is at the forefront of rain enhancement technology. Seawater desalination is a costly answer to meet increasing water demands, but will offer a reliable source at plants in Ashdod and Ashkelon on the Mediterranean coast. Within 3 years, these plants will supply 15% of Israel's water requirements.
200 million cubic meter will be desalinated within 3 years, the next 3 years. It will be done by several plants. The first plant will be in Ashkelon. Mekorot company guides a turnkey tender for the construction of another plant at Ashdod. The price of desalinated seawater, desalinated water will be around, we don't know for sure, but it will be around 60 to 65 US cents per cubic meter. And if you multiply it by 200 million cubic meter per year, you know how much it will cost. Of course, the investment for the construction of this plant is hundreds of millions of dollars.
All these little things will not solve the problem. And we are in a real trouble. In order to solve it, we must produce a lot of water. In order to put it back on track, we need to desalinate tomorrow morning 500 million cubic meter per year. This is roughly a quarter of all the water used in Israel. The present government is only beginning to respond to this need.
Desalination could help solve the water crisis, but the cheapest, most economical method is simply to implement conservation practices on household, industrial, municipal, and agricultural consumption. Leakages must also be prevented and the public educated as to the seriousness of the problem.
Well, in Israel we have now a terrible shortage of water, and still one sees too much waste of water. And I believe that we still don't have in the Israeli public the necessary awareness to conserve water, and here some actions of education might be quite helpful.
The garden should not be an imitation of an English garden with a lot of grass and so on. There are a lot of beautiful plants, colorful, and that can cover areas and to produce shade and so on, with plants that can survive and can grow and flourish even with less water.
Many countries in the Middle East face water crises. Those with fewer water resources reach the crisis level sooner than others. A comparison of potential per capita water availability gives Jordanian citizens 260 cubic meters each a year. Israel fares better with 350, while Egypt has 1,000, and Syria and Lebanon have 2,000 cubic meters per person per year. Interestingly, because of the Euphrates River, Iraq offers her people 4,000 cubic meters per person per year, which is 10 times more than Israel.
Water issues, the quantity and quality are the most important environmental concern of the 21st century. That has been basically the reason for several wars that erupted in this region. If you remember what preceded the Six-Day War, the diversion attempt by the Syrians of the Jordan resources.
Is there cooperation between Israel and any Arab nations in regard to water science?
Several years ago, before the recent political deterioration, there were the multilateral peace talks about regional cooperation, and water issues featured highly in that. Actually, I was on one of the committees for regional cooperation in rain enhancement. I can tell you from my personal experience.
Country?
With Jordan, and Egypt was interested. And some other countries in the region, in the Gulf. And I should tell you, based on my personal interactions, the scientists in our neighboring countries are still very interested, but they are handcuffed by the political issues, and we all pray for improved political climate so that we can improve the real climate.
According to the Torah, drought and rain in the land of Israel are associated with cursing and blessing for either disobeying or obeying the voice of the Lord. The promise linked to obedience in Deuteronomy 28 is that the Lord will open to you His good treasury, the heavens, to give you the rain of your land in its season.